Alright everybody, so we are moving on to variables in Java. Probably back in elementary school or middle school, you learned about variables. In algebra, a variable was a representation of a number. Well, in programming we have variables too. A variable is a reusable container for a value. A variable behaves as if it was the value it contains. But variables can contain more than just numbers. They can contain characters and even entire words. There's different data types. A whole number would be an integer. A number that includes a decimal would be a double. There's two categories of variables we'll discuss: primitive and reference. Primitive variables are simple values, like numbers. They're stored directly in memory, usually in a location known as the stack. Reference variables actually hold memory addresses on the stack. They point to a location in a different area known as the heap. Think of it this way. If I give you a primitive variable, that would be the same as me handing you $10. But if I give you a reference variable, a memory address, that would be the same as me giving you an IOU that says I owe you $10, but the actual money I owe you is at the bank. That might be a beginner's way of thinking of the difference between a primitive and reference data type. Primitive, I'm giving you $10. A reference data type, I'm giving you an IOU that I owe you $10. We'll discuss the different data types. We'll begin with integers. An int, short for integer, is a primitive data type. I'll show you how we can create an integer variable. In Java, there's two steps to creating a variable. The first is declaration. The second is assignment. Let's say we would like to create a variable that stores a whole number, an integer. With the first step of declaration, we're going to first type the data type of what we would like to store exactly. So for integers, we will type int. Then we should think of a unique variable name. We don't want to say x or something similar. That would make sense in basic algebra. But in programming, you want your variables to be descriptive. Like, shut up. In programming, you want your variables to be descriptive. So let's say we are working with, let's say, int age. End this line with a semicolon. So this is declaration, step 1. We are creating a variable named age. If I was to print my variable of age, system.out.println, let's print age and see what it is. Variable age might not have been initialized. We're using a variable, but we've never given it a value. We've never completed step 2 of assignment. So we can set age equal to a value. So on my YouTube channel, the average age of my viewers is approximately 21 or so. So let's set age to be 21, and then we'll print it. So that outputs 21. If I were to change this to 30, then my variable age would behave as if it was the number 30. So those are integers, they're whole numbers. Let's say that I'm 30.5. Let's see what happens exactly. You can see that IntelliJ is already giving us a warning that we're working with a different data type known as doubles. So if I were to run this, we get an error message. We have incompatible types from double to int. If we declare a variable as an integer, they can only store whole integers. Let's think of a few more examples. Another example of an integer could be a year. So let's say the year is 2025. Then we'll print our year. 2025. Or maybe a quantity. Int quantity equals 1. Then we'll print our quantity. 1. So when working with quantities, they're whole numbers usually, right? We wouldn't have, let's say, half a product, 1.5. I would like 1.5 Nintendo Switches. That wouldn't make sense, right? They would be whole numbers, like 1 or 2. Now you can output a variable with a string of text as well. Let's say the year is, then I'll add plus a variable, year. Make sure that the variable is not within quotes. So currently this says, the year is 2025. You do have to pay attention to the spacing. So after the word is, I'm going to add a space to separate is and the variable year. The year is 2025. Now, if our variable was within quotes, we would literally be printing the word year. The year is year. So don't do that, unless it's intentional. Let's go on to the next data type. The next data type is double. Double is a number, but it can contain a decimal portion, unlike int. Ints are whole numbers. So this time, we will create a variable type of double. What are some examples of a variable that could be a double? Let's say a price. There could be dollars and cents. $19.99. Or perhaps a GPA, a grade point average. Double GPA equals 3.5. Or a temperature. Double temperature equals negative 12.5. All right, let's output some of these. Let's do price. System.out.println. Let's output the price. 19.99. Let's add a unit of currency. I'll pick American dollars. So $ plus price. $19.99. If you were to assign a variable that's a double data type, but store an integer, here's what would happen. We would just add 0.0 to the end. It's still a double. So those are doubles. They're numbers that can contain a decimal portion, unlike integers. Okay, then the next data type we have is char, meaning character. Char pronounced like the word Charizard. So with chars, what are a few examples of single characters we could use? Let's say a grade, like a letter grade. With chars, characters, we enclose them within single quotes. Let's say we have the letter A. That's the grade we got on the last test or something. Or maybe a symbol. Maybe I'll put an exclamation point or something. Or currency. Char currency equals, pick a unit of currency. I'll pick dollars. Okay, then let's output some of these. System.out.println. Let's print our grade, which is an A. Or our symbol, an exclamation point. Or our currency, which is American dollars. So then we have something called booleans. Booleans are either true or false. We will declare this variable as a boolean. Let's check to see if somebody is a student. Our variable name will be isStudent. And this equals true or false. So if I am a student, I would say true. Now, a common naming convention in Java is called camel case naming convention. If your variable name takes up two words, such as is and student, when you combine them, the first letter of the first word should be lowercase. Then any word after, the first letter is going to be uppercase. So, is student. And I will set that to be true. Maybe something is for sale or not. Boolean for sale equals false. It's not for sale. Is somebody online? Boolean is online. And I will set that to be true. These are a few examples of Boolean variables. Now you could output them directly using system.out.println. Let's test it. System.out.println. Let's output isStudent. Are we a student? That is true. Is something for sale? For sale. That is false. Now with Boolean variables, we don't typically output them directly to the console. We tend to use them more internally within a program. One place in which you might see them is with the use of if statements. And this is a future topic, we'll revisit it later, but I want to demonstrate the usefulness of Booleans. So this is an if statement. we can check some condition, parentheses, then curly braces. If our condition is true, if isStudent double equals true, but we could simplify this to if isStudent. If this variable contains true, which it does, we can execute some code. System.out.println, we will print the following. You are a student. If this Boolean variable contains true, we will print the following. You are a student. Or we could add else, an else clause. Else, let's print, you are not a student. So currently, we're still a student, but if this Boolean variable contained a value of false, we would perform the else statement. You are not a student. So we'll cover if statements in a future topic. You don't necessarily need to know how these work right now, but that's one of the uses of Booleans. They can only contain true or false. These are a few of the basic primitive data types for beginners. Int for integers, they contain whole numbers. Doubles are numbers, but they can contain a decimal. Chars, meaning characters, are single characters, and Booleans, which are either true or false. These are a few of the beginner primitive data types, but there's still a lot more than this. There's floats, there's long doubles, all sorts of different data types, but you don't need to know those as a beginner. I would just stick to these 4 for now. So then we have the reference data types, a few of which include strings, arrays, and objects. In this topic, we're only going to discuss strings, a series of characters. Arrays and objects are really complex. We'll revisit these later. So we're going to create a string, a series of characters. So the data type is going to be string. An example of a series of characters could be a name. What's your name? With strings, we enclose them within double quotes. Chars, single characters, are single quotes. It's really easy to mix the two up. You might do it a few times as a beginner. So type in your name, including a space. I'll use my YouTube channel name. And then we will output our name, system.out.println. Print your name. And your first and last name should appear. Now, we could use this variable of name within another string. This is known as string concatenation. So let's say hello plus our name. Hello, bro code, or whatever your name is. What are a few other examples of strings we could write? Let's add string food equals, again within a set of double quotes, add your favorite food. Mine is pizza. Then let's type again system.out.println. Your favorite food is plus the variable food. Your favorite food is pizza. What about an email? String email equals, make up an email, fake123@gmail.com. Strings, they can contain numbers, but we treat them more as characters rather than actual numbers that we can use for any sort of math or arithmetic. So let's print our email. Your email is plus email. Your email is fake123@gmail.com. Or what about a car? String car. Think of a car that you like. I will pick a Mustang. That's another example of a string. Or a color. String color equals red. So strings are a series of characters. They have a reference data type. You may have also noticed that the font color of strings is different from the primitive data types too of booleans, chars, doubles, and ints. At least within my workspace, the font color is orange. And with strings, the font color of these data types is white. Now we're going to cover a few exercises. So let's start with our name. System.out.println. We will print hello plus our name variable. It's a string. Hello, your first and last name. Let's print our age. System.out.println. You are. We're going to insert our variable age, then add another string literal. You are age, years old. Again, do pay attention to the spacing. You are 30 years old. Let's use my GPA. That's a double. System.out.println. Your GPA is, then we will insert our GPA. Your GPA is 3.5. Okay, let's use our char of grade. System.out.println. Your average letter grade is our variable grade. Your average letter grade is A. Now, within a single println statement, we're going to combine multiple variables. Let's say we're going to output our color, a year, and our car, all within one print statement. System.out.println. Let's say we're choosing a car. Your choice is a, we'll add our color variable, plus the year, plus our car. Let's see what happens exactly if we attempt this. So we've combined all three variables, red, 2025, and our car of Mustang. So we're going to add some space characters between each to separate them. So plus a space character, add that after the color, after the year. We'll add a space between color and year and car. So your choice is a red 2025 Mustang. Let's display the currency and a price. System.out.println. The price is plus currency. I picked American dollars plus price. The price is $19.99. For a car, let's up that. That's way too cheap. That's too good to be true. Let's say $19,999.99. That's more realistic. Now we're going to use this Boolean variable of for sale. If for sale, if this is true, then we're going to print there is a plus car plus the text of for sale. Else we will print something else. I'll just copy this. Let's say the plus car plus is not for sale. For sale currently, that's set to false. The Mustang is not for sale. But if this were true, there is a Mustang for sale. For sale is set to true. Alright everybody, so those are variables in Java. A variable is a reusable container for a value. A variable behaves as if it was the value that it contains. There's two different categories of variables, primitive and reference. Primitive data types are simple values, like integers, floats, single characters, and booleans. They're stored directly in memory, usually in a location known as the stack. Reference variables, such as strings, which are a series of characters, like your name, or an email, they're more complicated. We store a memory address that points to a location in the heap. And your homework assignment is in the comment section. Post 5 variables: a string, an integer, a double, a char, and a boolean. And if you don't do your homework, you're going to make me sad. And well, everybody, that is an introduction to variables in Java.